Right, good morning, everybody. 1 second, I'm just going to very abruptly kill the music. There we go. Apologies, we don't have a fade out feature for this, so it's just a hard cut. So thank you very much for joining. And welcome to accessing on-premise files remotely, and also happy Friday, as Ryan's already put in the chat. So I'm not Dave Prince, funnily enough, as it says on the slide. My name is James Dancer. I'm Academia Group Technical Director, which encompasses Atama as well. And I'm Dave's designated button pusher, moderator, panic button person for this morning's session. Dave is presenting. He is our lead Microsoft and infrastructure consultant, and he's got some slides and a demo for you. So quick bit of housekeeping before we kick off. Feel free to ask questions throughout the session. If you look in the bottom right of your chat window, you've got a box where you can type comments and chat, obviously. There is a little button just above that to the right that changes from chat mode to Q&A mode. And what that does, if you want to ask a question, change it to Q&A mode first, then type in your question in the comment box, and that will put a little red Q next to your question. So at the end for Q&A, we know to pay attention to that. If you forget, don't worry. Ryan from our marketing team is moderating as well, so he will find any questions and check them as questions if you guys don't for whatever reason. And that is pretty much it. So I'm going to hand over to Dave now, who hopefully is going to turn his camera on now. Yay! There we go.
Good morning.
Good timing. So I'll be back for Q&A, but for now, I will leave you in the very capable hands of Dave Prince.
Oh, thank you very much, James. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well. Thank you very much for joining us on this session. So if you are on this session, which I can see quite a number of you are at the moment, you are probably, you're definitely interested in accessing your on-premise data or files from a remote location. Obviously, the last couple of months have made the requirement for that quite a little bit more than it would have been before. Maybe you are in a position at the moment where you have a VPN or remote desktop solution, or maybe another third-party remote file access solution. But what we will be demonstrating today is a technology called Folder, absolutely brilliant little tool. And this will help get your on-premise file servers, whether they be a Windows box, a NAS, whatever it might be, accessible to your outside world. So, proceeding through the slides, let's paint a bit of a picture here. So you have your school or your office, the place in which you predominantly work, probably up until recently. And within this site, you could well have a Windows file server. That Windows file server may have data on it, such as users' home directories, so their desktop, their documents, anything else that you might redirect for them. They can also host if you're an education establishment, a student share, teacher share. You might have an administration share. If you're not education and you are commercial, then you could have finance shares, marketing shares, what have you. As mentioned, you may also have an on-site NAS, so little storage utility, maybe a couple more shares. So in this instance, I have an images and a music library within this NAS. And at the top there, if you are still running a Mac Mini, obviously not supported anymore, but if you are, you may still have one. If it's running a later version of Mac OS, then that'll also be presented in SMB share. So again, multiple different scenarios in which you can host your data on premise. Now, we have that data for a reason, and that reason is our users. Users love storing data. Users will have data on desktop, as mentioned. They could have a couple of shares dotted around the place, and in this instance here, my user has got 3 different share locations, a couple of which are on a Windows file server, one's on this NAS box illustrated here. So at the moment, these shares might be presented to them as map network drives. So if you're running a Windows device, then your home drive might be your H drive, your staff share might be your S drive, your images drive might be an I drive, whatever. You could even have desktop shortcuts pushed down to users that go straight into these locations. Point being, there's a lot of potential places for users to store data and multiple different ways in which they can access it. So expanding on the on-premise side of things, there is also a raft of cloud storage solutions out there as well. So I've listed a few there, from OneDrive. So if you're using Office 365, for example, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams, you might have data sitting in. You might have a VLE, for example, or a learning system such as Firefly, or anything else that has the ability to store data. The point is that you can have data pretty much anywhere, and I think one of the main things in IT and for an IT administrator is to try and bring these all into one place and try and make sure they're managed efficiently and accessible, most importantly, to everybody. So let's take the equation here where home users or remote users. I have put a picture of what looks to be a very American style house in here, but this could illustrate a coffee shop. It could be that you've gone out for a meeting and you're in a coffee shop, you're sitting in a park or wherever you might be. You might be, in this instance, working from home. So let's move our user to their house. So we now have a user sitting at home, and obviously cloud-based storage solutions are still accessible to them because they're based in the cloud. So that user's moderately happy at the moment because they can access their Dropbox, their OneDrive, whatever it might be. However, they will not be able to access your on-prem data. Now, again, going back to what I said a moment ago, that's obviously depending on your environment. You might have a VPN solution, you might have remote desktop. Point is, these two solutions can be a little bit cumbersome to manage, can be a bit awkward, and it also requires quite a bit more end user, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Bit more work on the end user's point of view. They've got to remember that if they want to access that file, then they need to open up their VPN software, sign in, apply multi-factor authentication. Sometimes it might not work. Remote desktop solutions, also brilliant solution of doing this. However, the actual back-end maintenance, back-end administration of a remote desktop solution is not the most straightforward thing in the world. So at the moment, again, we have our home user here who has access to their cloud storage, but not access to their on-premise resources. So going back to where we were there, just taking off the lines, you can see my little user has turned a bit sad, gone a bit red, hopefully not too angry. But this is where we will look at implementing Folder. Folder is an absolutely incredible little utility. It's a very small, very lightweight utility, but extremely powerful. The concept here is that you can place Folder on your internal network. Now, if you've got a slightly more advanced network, then absolutely you can put this into a DMZ. You can have it separated from your main network. But Folder will sit inside your organization, inside your primary network, where all of those file shares and file storage locations are. And then with a little bit of input from your administrator, the admin will come along, configure Folder. The demo that I'm about to present to you, I've set up Folder quite a few times, but just to put this in perspective here, the demo that I have put together here, I would say it took me about 45 minutes to an hour to actually set up Folder and make it publicly accessible and point it to all of my share locations. So the administrator will come along and they will point Folder to all of those shares, again, regardless of whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. The main focus of today's session is that data will be on-premise, but from Folder, you can hook up to your SMB shares on Windows Server, on a NAS, on your Mac Mini, and all of these cloud locations as well. So once the administrator is happy that Folder is configured properly, he has added in all of the bits and pieces that he knows that users will use. Obviously, that's not set in stone. If from day one he might realize as a department that he might have missed out, it's very simple to add them in. But once he's comfortable, once he's happy that Folder is set up and it can see all of the shares and that he's done some testing, we'll make it externally accessible. So that is depicted by the little fly out there of that web browser window saying My Files, if any of you have got very good eyesight. And then, there you go, our users become happy again. So out of the box, any user can hook up to Folder via a web browser, whether that be Edge, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Opera if you wish, and they can access all of the file locations that the administrator has made visible to them. Then, of course, myself included, if I was given a choice of using a web browser to access all of my data, it'd probably do for a little bit, but I think you'll find the majority of people out there do prefer the common and familiar look and feel of having some integration with, whether it be Windows Explorer on a Windows device or Finder on a Mac. So you can push down applications for folder so that your users can have that data accessible to them in their normal familiar view. You also have folder mobile apps, something I'll demonstrate in a bit as well. If you're an Android user or if you're on an iOS device, then you can use the folder apps natively you can use folder apps on these devices to access your data, again, whether that data is on-prem or in the cloud. So, this is the demonstration part, and I hope the demo gods are with me today, but I'm going to share my screen with you all. Brilliant. There we go. So here we have a Windows 10 device, and we are currently logged on with a teacher account. Again, I've kind of done this little bit education thing, but again, the principle can apply regardless of whether you're education or whether you're commercial. So I have a teacher account here, and let's say, for example, this user is in the office. So they would come in here, they'd open up their Windows Explorer window. They have their desktop, which I've put a bunch of little files on. They have their documents folder. If I come down here to this PC, they have their home drive. Now again, your environments may differ, but in my case, I've just redirected the desktop and documents that you can see here back into my home drive. I have a company data drive, which contains a few folders, and I have an SMT share drive. So again, I've got my H drive, my S drive, and my T drive here. Now, you'll also notice, and I won't cover this too much in this demonstration, but I've also got links to Dropbox, links to my OneDrive account, and links to some SharePoint sites as well. So, brilliant. We have all of this storage. And again, focusing on the on-premise side of things, if this user were to go home, if this user were to be off the network, then these folders here in particular probably wouldn't be accessible to them. Now, of course, there is offline files with Windows. It's not the greatest technology in the world, being quite honest there, but these folders here, these drives here will not be available to the user from home unless they hook up to a VPN. So this is where folder comes in. Now at the moment, I've configured folder, just previous demonstration of course, configured folder, and I've pointed it to these locations. So let's pretend that this device here is now off the network and cannot access those files and files, folders, and drives that I just showed you down there. So within folder here, I have my shared data drive. Actually, if I pull this over here a little bit and resize that, for some reason I can't quite grab that corner. There is my shared drive, which looks just like that. Snap. I have my home drive here with my desktop in, and across here I have my home drive with my desktop in. So this is presenting that data to users in a very nice, straightforward fashion here. Now, on top of this as well, won't cover it in a huge amount of depth, but there is also OneDrive integration here. So if I jump there, you'll see, give that a minute to catch up. There you go. You'll see that that is exactly the same. So not only here are you making your on-premise data accessible remotely to your users, but you're also giving them one place that they can come to find all of their data. So no longer does the user have to think to themselves, right, that file's in OneDrive and I need to have OneDrive on this device and go to that website. I need to go to Dropbox for that file. I need to go to my T drive for that file. You can simply present all of their different locations to them via folder. So folder is a storage aggregator. It does not store data. You do not store data on folder. you use a folder to point to the locations where your data is stored. So just to give you a quick example of how quickly and seamlessly this does actually work here, I'm going to, on my desktop here, create a new file, create a new Word document, and I'll call it, I don't know, Friday, because I'm not very imaginative, but I can remember the day. Let's open up this document, and I will say this is a document made on Friday. Close that. Actually, no. Save that first, and close it. If I head back into my folder location here, let's go there. Log back in, jump onto my home folder, go to my desktop. There is my Friday doc that I just created a minute ago. Now, this is all on the same machine. So what I'll do here is if I flip across to my other screen, you'll see that I've got an iPad connected here. I'll open up folder. It'll sign me in. I can then tap on my home folder. I can tap on my desktop. And there is my Friday document just on the left-hand side that you can see here. Now, not only can you view this, but of course, you can edit it. So if I tap on this document here, it'll give me a preview. But then up in the top right corner here, you can see the multitude of things I can do with that file. I can either upload new files. I can download that one particular file to my machine if I allow it. Within folder, when you create a share, you can say, I do not want people to download data from this share. So of course, you are then containing the data within your organization. If it's a commonly used file or folder, you can bookmark that. You can preview the file in the PDF, but what I'll demonstrate very quickly now is opening that document in Word. And there is the document on my iPad, which I just made a moment ago. Let's add a couple of lines. Yes, it is indeed. Let's close out of that document. And let's just head back there. Scrolling back across here, if I come back into my Friday document that I edited on that iPad, actually I'll tell you what, even better, as a user from their desktop, because this is where users will ultimately be accessing the data from, open that Friday doc. And there is that change that I just put up on the iPad. So again, folder is proxying, facilitating that access back to your data on premise. When on that iPad there, I didn't download it, I didn't save it, I didn't then have to re-upload it once I saved it. All I did was edit that document via the folder app on my iPad, and once it's saved, it wrote straight back to my desktop location on site. So the final part that I'll quickly run you through here is just to show you a little bit of what the admin interface looks like. So folder, appreciate that not all admins like command line interfaces, not all admins like big clunky interfaces with thousands and thousands of buttons. Folder is very, very simple to set up. Not only will it, well, you can configure it to automatically update. In this case, I haven't. It's gone where it's found an update, but it hasn't actually applied it for me. But you can set this to automatically update, so bring through any new feature upgrades, any security fixes, whatever it might be. The main bits to cover on here are the fact that you can integrate with your existing backend Active Directory instances. So in this case, my users, I don't have to go away and recreate all of my users back in folder. All I need to do is just say to folder, here's Active Directory, and then all of my users who are already on the network will have access to folder. So in this case, very simple. I've just put in a service account with read access to AD, told it where to look, and now any of my users in AD can log in. But one of the main bits is, keep clicking the wrong place, this share and storage view. This is where you actually add your locations into users, into folder for your users to access. So if I come back here to this SMT share, you will notice I do not have an SMT share presented to my users via folder yet. This SMT share resides, actually I'll tell you what, let's go about it this way, right there. So if you can see the bottom left corner of my screen, I have the SMB path to where that SMT share is. So if I copy that out, I'll come up here, I'll add new, I'll add a new share called SMT share, point it to that location, and let's give it an icon. Now, on the access side of things, I don't have to use a service account, but I will do because it does make things a lot easier. But at the moment, I have a folder service account, which is just created on my AD. All it needs is the ability to list a directory. Don't worry if any of you guys on this call are admins. You do not have to give it full carte blanche access to everything. So I will use that service account. You can, and this is very important to remember here, folder does not, so folder will always respect the permissions of your shares. So folder won't come along, and if a user has got no access to an SMT folder, folder will not then give users who shouldn't have access. It will always acknowledge the underlying share permissions. So don't worry, you aren't going to be giving anyone any more access by using this. So typically what I'll do is test access, and what that does is effectively, if any of you are familiar with access-based enumeration on Windows, it effectively just hides shares and folders from people who don't have access, and then enable full ACL support. So again, adhering and following your underlying security permissions. I will then click on save on that, and then let's come back into my users folder, head back to my files, click on refresh my files, and there is my SMT share, exactly how I left it here. So there you go. If you take me explaining how to set that up away from things, setting up a share on folder and presenting that to your users can literally take 20 seconds. It is that straightforward. Again, what I'm doing here is I'm using this via a web browser. If your users do wish to actually access their folder content down here, then in a here's one I made earlier fashion, let me open up folder. I will sign in. You can, by the way, have automatic single sign-on. You can have folder launch at startup. You can have folder pre-populate the user's server address. All those bits and pieces are covered by reg keys or preference files. Oh, maybe a bit to edit out the video there. And head into my files, and there is my SMT share. So, in summary, folder is awesome. Folder is brilliant. It is a very simple way of presenting your on-premise file servers to your external users. It's also a very, very good way of bringing together all of your storage locations across multiple platforms. And again, just reducing the user's needs to have to remember where everything is. You can just simply present folder to them, and that will bring OneDrive, SharePoint, Dropbox, everything into the mix. So I believe that is it.
Okay, right. So 1 second, let me just get some slides back on, and I believe we are there. So if you have any questions, please feel free to start putting them in the chat. Bear in mind there is a 10-second delay between you typing your questions and us responding to them. There's a feature built into our webinar software that allows us to kill the feed if we say anything we shouldn't, basically, or if anything happens. So there's one question we had during the demo there, which says, do home users need to install a folder client? So I think we probably answered that, or Dave probably answered that on the demo itself. But yeah, there's web-based is absolutely fine. The thing, Dave, it might be worth sharing your screen again, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, but something that's always useful is when you're in the web browser and you're looking at your files, your folder files in the web browser, when you want to open a file, you've actually got some quite interesting options, and Dave probably knows where I'm going with this. It doesn't matter where a file is stored. You can edit it in any editing location that that user has access to. So, for example, a folder can be stored on a NAS on-prem. and the user can then edit that in Google Docs, or they can edit that in one of the Office 365 online apps, or they can use any of the desktop apps like Microsoft Word, Excel, or whatever, and it will automatically save and sync back to its original location. So it's actually quite good as a way to allow users to edit what they want, regardless of where it's stored. So yeah, no need for a client if you don't want. The web client is actually quite powerful, but there are clients available for Mac OS, Windows, basically everything, which I think has actually answered the other question of does it have a Mac OS client for end users? So yes, there you go.
Yep, I use it religiously. So yeah, so Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, main platforms there. If any of your devices don't fit that bill, then you do have the web client, which, as James mentioned, is just equally as powerful. Yeah, and for some reason, it's not letting me reshare my screen. But
okay, well, whatever. It's pretty straightforward. There's buttons to edit stuff. Okay, so that's those two. So, how do you present OneDrive, SharePoint, etc.?
So, OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. So what you'd do is you would create an app integration between Folder and OneDrive. You would say, allow it to read user permissions, allow it to read user home directory, and then what that would then do is then pick up that user's permission from there on. So you create a service account, you point it at the Azure AD app integration level to Folder, and that's pretty much it. Again, I set that up in the demo. That took probably more like 5 to 10 minutes to set up, but again, very, very simple, very straightforward. So you can do the same method. Oh, I can't even say that word. The same principles. There we go. Thank you, James. The same principles. Let's go for that word. Apply to Dropbox and Google Drive as well, for example. So it's just done between Azure app integration and Folder.
Cool. Okay, so how many concurrent users would a Folder server support? So that depends on the spec of the server. The thing I don't think we mentioned is that Folder is deployable as a virtual machine template.
Yeah.
So effectively, you're just literally deploying the template in your hypervisor of choice. It supports Hyper-V, VMware ESXi, vSphere, all of that kind of stuff. I think they've even got templates for Zen as well. I think Zen's available. There's basically a number of deployable templates, and it's going to depend really on the spec of the VM that you have. Folder is also clusterable as well, so there is a high availability deployment. And having deployed it myself a number of times, it is the easiest HA setup I think I've ever done. You basically pop up a bunch of machines. It's all the same template. You tell them how to see one another from an IP address perspective. You tell them what the roles are. So this one's a database, this one's a front end, and then you click go, and then it just works, provided you've got a suitable load balancer in front of it. So
I've managed to share my screen. Going back to that question, as James mentioned, you can have multiple different boxes, multiple different nodes. It is very, very straightforward to configure here. So you've got your client access node, which is where your users connect into. If your environment does get very big, if you, let's say, for example, have tens of thousands of users connecting into this, you can add dedicated database nodes as well to the environment, just to bolster that up as well. And again, you can also have just search nodes. So it is very flexible. It's one template, it's one install, but all of the information is in there that is required to then set this up how you want, with as many different nodes as you want.
That's a good point, actually. We didn't really mention search, but search is another thing that Folder can do. It searches basically all locations, including inside documents, and allows you to search across the whole lot. So you can do one search using sort of standard Boolean English language, and it will look at all of your documents that are in SharePoint, G Suite, on-prem. So it's actually a really good way to index inside documents that are on-premise storage as well. So Windows file search is a thing.
You're allowed to say naff.
it's a thing. But yeah, Folder's a lot quicker and a lot better at doing that. So you can use it to index an awful lot of stuff. So another question. Sorry, Dave, do you have something to add?
No, I was just going to say, so I've literally set this up out the box, so my appliance has only got 2 gig of memory here.
Okay.
But if you do want to enable search, it is recommended you have 4 gig. Again, that is just on that box. If you do get to the point where you're going to have more than one folder node or instance, then you can split that out how you want.
Cool. So could you talk through the MFA option?
Yep, so there is an MFA option. So along here, you've got 2-factor. You have multiple different providers. Well, I say multiple. You have 2 providers at the moment for folder MFA. You have folders built in MFA, which actually is very, very good. We use that ourselves. We use Azure MFA for multiple other platforms, but we actually use folder MFA for folder access, folder MFA, funnily enough. Again, you can allow users to have backup codes should they lose their device. You can whitelist subnets, network locations. So for example, you might not want people to be prompted for MFA if they are inside your working office or coming from somewhere within your network. The other option here is it does integrate with Duo as well. So they are your 2 offerings for MFA here. Either folder out the box, which like I said does a very, very good job. But if you're already using something like Duo, then why not make the most of it and integrate folder into Duo?
Yeah, and the user experience is pretty straightforward. It's the first time they sign in after MFA has been enabled. They need to sign in and choose an MFA code, or do the challenge response thing via QR code.
Yeah.
So it's really, really, really straightforward. Are there a lot of universities that currently use this product, and is there an education price? So yes and yes. Folder was originally born in education. It was made by a couple of guys that worked in a school, and they saw the issue that was presented to access on-premise storage from outside the network. So it was originally built with education in mind, but obviously, as you can see, there's lots more features in there that are suitable for all kinds of markets, including, I think NASA either tested it or have it. I can't remember which one, but they definitely have seen it, and they've been using it in some form. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but whatever, I just have. And so, yes, there is absolutely categorically education pricing, and it's not just here is an education discount from list price. There's actually education structured pricing as well. So if you get in contact with your account manager, then absolutely we can do that, and we will make sure we contact you guys after this anyway. Yeah. What about Azure MFA? Did you see that?
I knew that question was going to be asked. That's why I've got a little wry smile on my face. So yeah, thank you for that question. I would love to say that it is. We are so we've got a good relationship with Folder. It's actually a question that I've posed them a couple of times as well. I don't have a definitive answer, but I'd like to think it'll be there one day. I'm afraid I can't give you much more than that. I'm sorry.
That was fairly succinct. Cool. So I think that is pretty much it. That's all the questions we've got. So we'll sort of sit around awkwardly for a few seconds just in case any more come in. But other than that, I think we're good. We could what? Sorry,
juggle.
I thought you said cuddle. So I don't think that's possible. So anyway, that's enough chatter, I think. Cool. So there's no more questions then, guys. We'll hang around in chat for a little bit. So we're going to put an outro slide on with the same music you heard on the way in. Feel free to chat to us with your cameras off, mics off, though. So if you've forgotten to ask anything or if anything else comes to mind, please feel free to chat to us about it. And that is it. Thank you very much for attending, everybody.
Thank you very much, all.